Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. And as it is February 26th, we are going to be watching Selina from 1997, directed by Gregory Nava and starring Jennifer Lopez. So again, we are dealing with a biography that is very well known after the fact, I'm pretty sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, I apologize for using those words, but I'm going to say the general public, other than the Latin community, we're not aware very much of this performer, Selina, until the tragedy of the ending of her life, and then going into the whole entire production of this particular movie. Again, I'm going to backtrack a little bit on that before I go any further and say that me personally, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I was definitely not aware of this very talented young performer and her rise to the position she rose to, and tragic ending is when I first knew about her from just the way that I would watch a lot of the entertainment programs and whatnot, and that was very big news at the time, and then eventually a movie being made about it. So before we go any further, as I mentioned, the movie does star Jennifer Lopez, as well as Jackie Guerrera, Constance Marie, Alex Mendez, John Cena, Edward James Olmos, Jacob Varga, and Lupe Ataveros. So this whole entire movie encompasses the life of this young woman, Selina, who, through her father's influence with her siblings, started off creating a small little kid band that started to escalate, became more popular. She became herself more popular, again pushing forward, becoming a very well-known name, and yeah, so this is what we watch. Now, the way this movie is shot is quite interesting. It does take on a theatrical view of this experience of Selina's life, even prior to her father's struggling career as a musician in a band from the 60s. But as we get into this, we do have a lot of performances of Selina's music. Jennifer Lopez does a fantastic job. All of the music that is used in this, where we're seeing Selina perform, we actually see like practically almost full performances. Like we're actually watching the entire song almost play out. And I'm not putting anything against it. The musical portions of her at a concert seem to be shot like a music video. We have like split screens and double screens, and the actual stock of the footage we're watching sometimes looks like it's on video, which was a popular thing at the time, music video wise and all that. I was surprised to find out that Jennifer Lopez does not sing at all during this movie. She basically lip syncs to Selina's actual musical tracks, so it's kind of cool to see that, and she does a fantastic job of lip syncing. But that being said, we deal with a lot more of her personal life, which is kind of cool because, of course, the general public would not know a lot about other than her performances and whatnot, and how immensely popular this talented woman became. The cast does a fantastic job. I'm always there to see Edward James Olmos' performance. He is a very strict but loving father. Jennifer Lopez just plays with such heart this young woman who fortunately has a tragic ending to her story. This is a loving and a really great tribute to this unfortunately short-lived star. One of the kind of nice things we have is at the end of the movie when we show those mourning for Selina, we get to actually see proper actual footage of Selina herself performing in all the different sequences, which are mirrored in the movie prior to it, and how they recreated so much precisely to what it is. And just like, of course, costumes are like practically spot on, and a lot of the influence of how they shot the Jennifer Lopez sequence is inspired by the footage that we now see of the real Selina doing all this stuff. And like I said, a loving tribute to this young woman. So the movie, basically at the start, at about like the opening credits, is her performing at the Houston Astrodome for a sold-out show on February 26, 1995, which again is like less than a minute into the beginning of this 2-hour and 7-minute movie. All right, and as this is the 27th of February, we are going to be watching Breaker Morant from 1980, directed by Bruce Beresford and starring Edward Woodward. Again, we're dealing with a time in history that I have no idea of what was going on at this time in history. We are dealing with an era that is brand new to me to get the information from this movie, as this movie is based on true events. So needless to say, this is a first-time watch for me. That being said, like I already mentioned, the movie does star Edward Woodward, as well as Brian Brown, Louis Fitzgerald, Jack Thompson, John Waters, and Alan Casal. So the events of this movie take place during the Boer War at the beginning of the 1900s. We're dealing with 3 Australian officers who are working with the British forces, who are brought up on charges of murdering POWs, as well as a German missionary that was assisting the British forces at the time. And this movie is a very dramatic courtroom drama. We're dealing with these 3 Australians who are basically railroaded into what the British officials want to push these gentlemen towards a guilty verdict so that they can become the fall men in trying to right the British's standings in this situation, as setting aside these Australians who were part of their forces and putting all the blame on top of them. The story is told in a back and forth sort of timeline. During the actual proceedings, we get flashbacks to sequences that lead up into the events that happen. Prior to this, their captain, the 3 Australians, their captain is killed in an ambush, his body mutilated as well, and upon discovering his corpse, they go into a bit of a revenge sort of hunt of the Boers who were responsible for his death. Upon coming upon 6 surrendering of these men, their leader, Harry Morant, played by Edward Woodward, and his counterparts of Lieutenant Hancock, who is Brian Brown, and Lieutenant Whitten, who is Louis Fitzgerald. They then basically have the 6 men executed, but for the most part, this is all trumped up evidence set aside by the governing British officials, putting on this pretty much kangaroo court, to use the phrase loosely, going up against Australians. And inevitably, it ends up with, on, again, this being actual true events, Morant and Hancock are executed on February 27th, 1902, which is an hour and 37-ish minutes into this 1 hour and 47-minute movie. And to put it out there, Whitten's sentence is commuted instead of being executed. He is put as life imprisonment, but he ends up becoming released 3 years later, as we find out from at the closing credits. So for the Academy Awards, it actually got some recognition with the nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. And as it is the 28th of February, we are going to be watching The Count of Monte Cristo from 2002, directed by Kevin Reynolds and starring James Caviezel. So at its very base, the story involved with the Count of Monte Cristo appears several times throughout the history of Hollywood. Several movies using the actual full title, but the actual revenge storyline being used in different versions and all that. And this is probably, of the ones that I have seen, this is probably my favorite version. Upon watching it, it's apparently been a while since I have actually seen the movie because of just a couple of faces when they pop up are like, oh, I completely forgot they were in this movie. So that being said, the movie not only stars James Caviezel, but also stars Richard Harris, Guy Pearce, Louis Guzman, James Frann, Dagmar Dominsk, and Michael Wincott. So this is probably at least my favorite swashbuckling version of this story. It's a movie that's not only looks really cool and packed with a lot of great actors doing some fantastic work, it is so entertaining to watch and to go along with this whole entire revenge storyline about a man who gets framed by a friend, goes away, comes back several years later under the disguise of a new person, and then seeks revenge upon those that wronged him before he was put away. And I mean, that's the basics of the Count of Monte Cristo to begin with. It is really cool to see this movie come out this way. I mentioned earlier some names and all that sort of thing, and it was really weird to, as I'm watching the opening credits, the name Henry Cavill showing up, and then when we see a character introduced way further into the movies, like, oh my god, look at that little baby face Henry Cavill. So it's just kind of cool to see stuff like that. And again, other faces like, wait, I recognize that voice, and then all of a sudden, oh my god, it's that guy. So yeah, quite entertaining. At the very beginning of the movie, practically about 15 minutes into this 2-hour and 11-minute movie, Edmond Dantes, who is James Caviezel, is given a message to pass on. Is given a message from a exiled Napoleon Bonaparte to deliver it. When he does not deliver it, someone takes possession of the letter, considers him to be committing treason, and he's arrested on the day of February 28th, 1815. That being said, as we do not have a 29th of February in this particular year of 2026, we do have the book listing a February 29th. So we're going to be watching Leap Year from 2010, directed by Anand Tucker and starring Amy Adams. So here we have a really clean but like funny sort of modern romantic comedy in this storyline. It seems like it came from like an earlier time in history, how like kind of wholesome and cute the interaction between our main characters are. Now, again, I have seen this movie, but it was back in the days of my DVD, my Blockbuster employment. So it was one of those, hey, you could rent a bunch of movies for free for the weekend, just to that. And I believe this was maybe been a new release at the time that I was, no, probably not, but it was probably just one that I saw because I was interested in seeing this. So that being said, not only did this movie star Amy Adams, but it also stars Matthew Goode, Adam Scott, John Lithgow, Caitlin Olsen, Noelle O'Donovan, Tony Rourke, Pat LaFan, and Alan Devlin. So it's one of those like road trip sort of movies, a romantic gesture that teams up our heroine with a person who's rubs her the wrong way and all that sort of thing. They butt heads throughout the whole entire way. At one point they start to, soften up to each other, and then when she gets into her relationship with the person she's there for, realize that eventually it doesn't quite work out, and then goes back to the guy she was butting heads with because they've created this sort of tension that turns into something that they both look forward to being in. It's like I said, it's sweet, it's cute, it's of an earlier era, fun little movie to watch. And the idea behind the movie itself is that there's an Irish tradition where on a leap year, which is February 29th, women are allowed to be the ones that propose to their boyfriends. And she is making this grand gesture to travel from the U.S. to where her boyfriend is currently over in the United Kingdom to do this as a romantic gesture. And at an hour and 11 minutes into this hour and 40-minute movie is when our lead character of Anna, played by Amy Adams, shows up in Dublin on February 29th, 2008. All right, and as this is the 1st of March, we are going to be watching The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers from 2002, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Elijah Wood. So to begin with, this is the first sequel to appear within this list. Not that it's the second movie, but it's not this like a second movie in a series of movies, but this is the sequel to a movie we've already seen on this list. And like I had previously mentioned in that, way back on the 12th of January, I'm a big fan of these movies. But seeing these visually put together the way Peter Jackson did this is just a fantastic thing. And it's something you definitely have to experience on the big screen. That being said, this particular movie, pretty much like the previous one, not only stars Elijah Wood, but it also stars Sean Astin, Viggo Mortensen, Ian McKellar, Orlando Bloom, John Rhys-Davies, Dominic Monaghan, Billy Boyd, Christopher Lee, and Liv Tyler. So we're doing a direct follow-up to the previous movie that in theaters was released the previous Christmas, and we are now dealing with the continuing stories, as this is the bridging story between the epic beginning and endings. Again, like the previous, we're dealt with a crapload of fantastically shot scenery, a lot of amazingly dealt with digital effects, gorgeous costuming, and fantastic acting as we deal with a story where our characters are just split apart from each other and just go about on their own adventures spreading across Middle Earth. Gandalf dealing with his cliffhanger for the previous movie. We have Frodo and Sam off on their adventure to get rid of the ring, encountering Gollum and then becoming a trio. Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas trying to chase down the orcs that kidnapped Merry and Pippin at the end of the previous movie. And again, it's just, you're just overwhelmed by the beautiful representation of Middle Earth throughout this, no matter how bright or how dark or how light or how evil the sequence that you're watching is. It's just a wonderful thing to witness with spectacular special effects throughout. And it's on March 1st, 3017 TA, when Sam, Frodo, and Gollum leave the hills and enter the Dead Marshes, which is about 35 minutes into this 2-hour and 59-minute movie. And also, like its predecessor, it got a lot of recognition for the Academy Awards that year. It ended up winning Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing, as well as being nominated for Best Picture, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. All right, and as it is the 2nd of February, we are going to be watching Seabiscuit from 2003, directed by Gary Ross and starring Tobey Maguire. All right, so this is one of those movies that got a lot of attention when it was being made and when it came out, just by the story and the actual cast and whatnot. Definitely helped with this. It was very interesting to see in the zeitgeist of when this movie was coming out. This was previous to this, a one-time watch. I believe it must have been a Blockbuster employment watch, if I remember correctly. If not, it definitely was on early DVD is what I'm going to guess at. So like I had mentioned, this does star Tobey Maguire, but it also stars Jeff Bridges, Chris Cooper, William H. Macy, Elizabeth Banks, Gary L. Stevens, and Eddie Jones. So this movie is a compilation of like 3 characters that culminate into one storyline. At the beginning of the movie, I thought I had, for some strange reason, brought up the wrong movie because of the beginning of the movie with Jeff Bridges being a bicycle repairman that ends up becoming this big car salesman in his town, and I had like, wait, did I put on Tucker, a Man in His Dream? Then we eventually get into Tobey Maguire's story, but actually we start off early in his character's life, where his family gets destroyed by the Depression, And then we eventually meet up with a former cowboy who ends up working in the stalls, and all three men have Seabiscuit brought into their life to bring them together. So, of course, to begin with, the poor animal Seabiscuit is needs to be trained and is considered lazy, and then eventually, once Tobey Maguire gets involved with his writing as a jockey, quite a tall jockey, but it's the magic of the movies. I mean, it's kind of a really spirited movie with the drive of these people pushing for a better life for themselves after such tragedy previously in their life up until this point. I mean, no matter what, the audience is pulling for both Red and Seabiscuit to pull through. It's a bit of an underdog story. Now, at one point, Seabiscuit does get injured to the point where technically he really should no longer be a racing horse, but Red then helps nurse the horse, and Seabiscuit has his final race on March 2nd, 1940, which is about 2 hours and 4 minutes into this 2 hour and 20-minute movie. And while the Academy Awards, it didn't win anything, it did get quite a number of nominations, such as Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. All right, and as it is the 3rd of March, we are going to be watching The Miracle Worker from 1962, directed by Arthur Penn and starring Anne Bancroft. So again, we're dealing with a real-life situation, historical event. I highly doubt anyone is not aware of the existence of Helen Keller. And while they would be familiar with the name, they're probably not 100% sure of the actual situation surrounding her. This version of the movie is a first for me, and actually, to be totally honest, I believe this is the first version of any Helen Keller biopic that I've seen. And like I mentioned earlier, it does star Anne Bancroft, as well as Patty Duke, Victor Jory, Inga Sweeson, and Andrew Prince. As a movie upon itself, we have to acknowledge the fact that this is Patty Duke's very first theatrical performance, and being teamed up to work against the incredible Anne Bancroft. Patty Duke does a tremendous job, especially in a role where she basically has no words to begin with, no lines to begin with. The movie itself starts off with a young Helen Keller succumbing to getting quite sick as a baby, ended up losing both her sight and becoming deaf as well. And then we deal with several years later, her family trying to deal with the situation of this unfortunate situation that this girl is living in. They then refer to a distant school for the blind in Boston. They end up sending Annie Sullivan, who's Anne Bancroft, to help assist them with the raising and teaching of their child. So I have to point out that at the very beginning of this movie, it starts off with the look and feel of a horror film, just the way it's shot with its very drastic, because the movie is in black and white to begin with, so the opening sequences are very darkly shaded. There's a lot of contrast between the darks and the lights. And of course, we have the sequence at the very beginning where we realize that the daughter is deaf and blind. She does not react to visual or sound stimulation. We don't actually see the child itself, but we have her parents over top of her, kind of clapping their hands and waving their arms and just shouting really loud. And then we go into some very kind of creepy opening credits as we see an older Helen Keller sort of making her way through the household in different vignettes, getting to the point where there's this shot of her at a Christmas tree and dropping an ornament that all has this really creepy sort of look to it. Now, the movie itself is not creepy. It just happens to have this sort of unsettling sort of opening. And again, we're dealing with a movie that is a very emotional core to it, and it is sometimes kind of difficult to watch at times. Not only, again, are we dealing with this young actress, Patty Duke, in her first on-screen performance being pretty much thrown around, but she also also does her own throwing around. She very violent outbursts, beautifully done sequences. Her and, like I said, Anne Bancroft work fantastically together in several very sometimes unsettling to watch sequences, but all in all, a very strong biopic. So it is March 13th of 1887 when Miss Sullivan shows up at the household, which is about 13 minutes into this hour and 46-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular year, it ended up winning for Best Actress for Anne Bancroft and Best Supporting Actress for Patty Duke, as well as being nominated for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Costume Design. And as it is March the 4th, we are going to be watching A Star is Born from 1954, directed by George Cukor and starring Judy Garland. So to begin with, this is one of several tellings of this particular story. The Star is Born has been made over and over and over again. I've seen a small handful of these versions, but this is the first time that I've actually seen this version. Actually, not until I actually saw this in here that I realized that it was Judy Garland. That being said, not only does this movie star Judy Garland, but it also stars James Mason, Jackie Carson, Charles Bickford, Tommy Noonan, Amanda Blake, and James Brown. So it was a bit of a struggle not to do a impression of James Mason saying James Mason's voice, but this pretty much follows the same storyline as all the others that became for and that would follow this version. It's just this time she's set into the world of Hollywood as the main caps. A lot are the following ones deal with musical acts. Now this is a movie that, well, from 1954, it does take place the decade previous to it, so we get to see a lot of this 40s Hollywood glam and all that showing up quite a bit in the movie, and it's just really kind of cool to see the perspective of Hollywood itself in the mirror. It's like I said, the movie made in the 50s but takes place in the 40s, so them reflecting on themselves is kind of an interesting perspective to see. We got Judy Garland doing the Judy Garland Best, fantastic actress and all that, and James Mason as well. I mean, you can't go wrong with the James Mason role. I was surprised at, again, this is not really a musical, but it has a lot of musical numbers in it. We have long, drawn-out sequences where Judy Garland is performing like a medley of several songs strung together and costume changes and all that. Really big production, like big Hollywood movie production deals and all that sort of thing. A lot of costumes and whatnot, a lot of different makeups and hairs and all that, and she does a fantastic job. Then there's even a sequence where it's just her and James Mason in their house, and she does this big musical number in this seemingly really spread out room that allows her to do all this fancy dancing around and moving around while singing and whatnot, that you don't realize until the camera pulls back how massive this actually room is to allow her to do this dance sequence. And also there is also an intermission. This is, I think, only the second intermission that I've run into in this little program that I'm doing here. Yeah, it's like at the halfway mark. Actually, after a big, huge musical performance number that of Judy Garland, we then have this intermission, which is completely silent, just with the words intermission on the screen in red. I've seen this story several times, and the different eras reflecting the core issues of what this movie falls around. And it's set on the March 4th, 1943 Academy Awards, where Vicky, who is Judy Garland, wins for her Best Actress Award, and that's about 2 hours and 2 minutes into this 2 hour and 34-minute movie. However, there is another version of this movie that has restored footage and all that, bringing it out to almost 3 hours. I believe it's just 2 hours and 55 minutes long. That was not the version that I saw. However, speaking of Academy Awards, this did get quite a few nominations, including Best Actress for Judy Garland, Best Actor for James Mason, Best Color Art Direction, Best Color Costume Design, Best Original Song, and Best Original Score. Alright, so that's going to let us wrap up this particular episode. We're going to look off to the future to see what we're going to be seeing for the 5th of March, and that is Judgment at Nuremberg from 1961. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.